Hi everyone. Good morning, good evening, good day, because I think you have joined from different continents of the world. So the Zoom is that way good because it's connecting us virtually. Thank you all for being here. Before proceeding, I'm just going to talk about 5 minutes about Coco Town because I see a lot of new faces here. So just bear with me for a few minutes. So I'm Andal Balu. I'm the president and co-founder of Coco Town. The Cocoa Town is in the business of creating and empowering chocopreneurs. And when we say just creating and empowering, we are not just selling machines. We are also giving them the education, equipment, all the things. And also we help them grow. It's not just entry level machines. We have machines that can do from 500 grams all the way to 90 kilos a batch. And here is the small introduction. And our vision is to be a one-stop shop for chocopreneurs and foodpreneurs to make award-winning chocolates and gourmet foods. And we started the Concepts, the parent company, in 1992 as a trading company. We specialty kitchen equipments. That's what we traded. And then we always wanted to diversify. And then in 2008, we changed into Cocoa Town. And we always focused on sustainability in cocoa farming, customers, businesses, and environment. Because without the farmers, we are not here. Because we can earn money in the city, but if the farmers don't produce food, we cannot eat money. So we always appreciate the farmers and we try to help farmers. So when Cocoa Town came into the screen, scene of the craft chocolate, even farmers could make the chocolate and couverture and beans. And then customers businesses, we want to make sure our customers businesses thrive and grow because they are in turn creating the awareness of the craft chocolate and healthy chocolate. And then the environment, our machines we are making with the high quality stainless steel that doesn't end in the landfill, that has been working even after 16 years now. And then the equipment that we talked about, because we make patented equipment with high return on investment. We don't copy other people's machines. And then education, we are this we used to do bean to bar workshop in person, but during the pandemic we could not do it. So we wanted to see how we can help people who were stuck in the home for almost a year and a half in some of the countries. So we came up with the idea of empowering Chakopreneurs webinars. And then monthly, we want to do at least two different webinars on different topics. And then exposure. We also help our customers to exhibit in international chocolate festivals. We subsidize their booth for cost. And then we have enabled the Bint for Craft Chocolate movement because we make it accessible to anyone anywhere in the world. There's a low initial investment and a minimal footprint. It's the smallest machine that you can find for the efficiency. And then you just need a basic knowledge and skills. You don't have to have a specialized knowledge. And if something breaks, you don't have to wait for some technician to come from another country to come and fix it. You can fix most of them yourselves, or you can just find a car mechanic who can work on it. And then this is the people now, farmers can sell as a value added, as a nips, couverture, or even chocolate. And then we also have the price transparency, because before we came in, most of the chocolate equipment, you cannot find the price. You have to always get a price quote, and we don't know if everybody is paying the same price, but we want it to be equitable and ethical. And also we have the consistent pricing structure. We also provide financial structure, and regardless of where you are located. We are working with the two three different channels. So if you need any help with financing or leasing, please reach out to us. And then we are always innovative and patented machines. And we also have continuous improvements, because more people use our machines, we get more feedback and we implement more changes. But our all our changes are backward compatible. It's not like iPhone. You buy one and next year when the software comes, you have to throw the whole old phone and completely buy a new phone. It's not like ours. Even people who bought 10 years ago, they can add the new accessories and spares, with minimum interruption, and they have to just buy the new part and bring it to the current standard. And then capacity building, we have machines to make, like Cacao excellence. They use our machines to make the test batches of 500 grams for the Cacao of Excellence, evaluating the beans. And then we have the bigger machines that can do 90 kilos per batch. And then this is a small timeline. So we started in 1992, but we took 2 years to figure out what we want to sell. And the 94, we introduced the Indian wet grinders. In 2006, we started selling melanges, and then commercial grinders in 2007. And then over the years, you can see, now that we have the Empowering Chocopreneur series in 2020 due to the pandemic. And now we also have added the tempering machines. And then we always, thank you for attending this webinar. I know you're all eager to listen to Ketaki and Patricia about the chocolate market in India. I just want to finish it with Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. That translates to, may all the beings everywhere in the universe be happy and free. And may the thoughts, words, and actions of my own life contribute in some way to the happiness and the freedom for all. Thank you. I turn over to Teresa.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Mrs. Balu. So I've been charged with a little bit of housekeeping. What I would like to let you know is that this event is being recorded, and you will receive a link to view the recording at a later date. What we really would appreciate is when you receive that email, there will be a survey. If you can complete the survey, it helps us to know that we're on the right track, and it also helps us to know what type of topics you would like to have, and the sort of demographic of people that we're influencing with these webinars. The other thing I would like to tell you is that during the presentation, we will ask you to put your questions in the chat, and we're going to pause briefly between topics for an opportunity for a little discussion, questions. But in the meantime, if you'll put your questions in the chat, that will help us know what the questions are. Okay, so with that, the housekeeping what I would like to do is really quickly, before I turn the presentation over to Patricia and Katika, is just put the question out there, and either one of you can start with the answer. Is just give us a little bit, just a little peek into where or how your love affair with cocoa or chocolate began. Patricia, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I thought we are waiting for the attendees to reply to this.
No, you. It's a question for you, so we can get to know you a little bit. That's okay.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. My journey with chocolate started very, very long back. As a kid, I was always very, very obsessed with chocolate. I would say I would have chocolate every day, and my mom used to like even hide the chocolates from me because it was something that I would choose to eat over food itself. And the fact that my mom was also like a huge chocolate lover really gave me a lot of exposure to different chocolates, obviously commercial chocolates, while growing up. And then later, about 10 years back, I discovered craft chocolate, and I really felt that a new world just opened up in terms of the complexity of the flavors. And since then, I'm exploring the world of craft chocolate and learning things every day and connecting with amazing people.
Wonderful, thank you. And Katika, you want to answer for us?
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here and share the experience that me, Patricia, and along with all the other chocolate makers have sort of created over the years. But for me, my experience with chocolate, again, like I grew up eating a lot of commercial chocolate and loved it. But the real sort of affair started when I started working with it. I got a job at a local pastry shop when I was 19. And this pastry kitchen had a little chocolate room where only the chefs who are like higher in hierarchy were allowed to go in, and I was the commie chef. But when the head chef wasn't there, I would enter and sort of work there, and because it was sort of a rebellious act as well, because I was not allowed to go in, but I would still go and work there. And there were a couple of days where I spent my whole days at chocolate room, and it was just so lovely to work in a chocolate room with like kgs and kgs of chocolate. And from that moment onwards, I sort of realized that I want to work with this every single day. I want to deal with kilos and kilos of chocolate every day. And slowly, the more I learned about it, the more I read about it, the videos that I saw through my travels, I ended up at a cocoa plantation as well. Yeah, so over the years, I sort of went deep into the knowledge of chocolate, and that also helped me sort of maintain this love relationship with chocolate, because they're just, even now after spending 5-6 years working with it, I still find so many more things to look forward to. Yeah, it's exciting to be working with chocolate every day.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So with that, I will turn the presentation over to you, and we look forward to learning everything you're going to teach us.
Amazing.
Okay,
So
can you
today
see
we're
this?
talking about India's craft chocolate industry and how it looks right now. The picture that you see in the background, it's a picture taken at a farm in South India called Champoti. And this is a very common color of the cacao pods here in India. We will continue with a small presentation of each of us. Ketaki, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ketaki. I was born in a city called Mumbai in India. And I have been working with craft chocolate for past 6 years. Yeah, I worked at a chocolate factory as a bean to bar chocolate maker. Currently, I work at a cacao plantation where we have a small chocolate making setup, and I also end up fermenting the beans, drying them. So I'm studying post harvest here. With that, I also conduct something called tree to bar chocolate making workshops, where people from all over India travel and come stay here at the farm for 5 days. And we go through the journey of cacao pods on the tree up until the wrapping of the chocolate bars. Yeah, and with Patricia, we've sort of co-founded the Indian Cacao and Craft Chocolate Festival as well, and different projects that we do together. But yeah, I'll give it to Patricia to introduce herself.
Thank you, Ketaki. Yeah, so I'm originally from Romania, and my journey here in India with craft chocolate started 6 years back when I first came to India. And I was very surprised to discover a lot of craft chocolate brands already here. I think I wasn't expecting that. So then a lot of like exploration followed. I visited a lot of post-harvest processing units, a lot of chocolate factories here and farms. I worked briefly with one of the craft chocolate brands, and then I started a personal project with a cacao farm here in Karnataka in the south, where I had conducted my own experiments with cocoa farming, fermentation, and drying. I always enjoyed connecting with everyone that I could reach from the industry here. So I think the festival was born from that and from the need of bringing everyone together and starting the craft chocolate community here in India. So the festival takes place every year here in Bangalore and brings farmers, chocolate makers, pastry chef, and basically everyone from the industry and the chocolate enthusiasts together. The other projects that we started are the Craft Chocolate Shelf, which is a retailing project for craft chocolate here to make craft chocolate more accessible to people. And online tasting model with a craft chocolate box, which takes place on Zoom every month.
All right, so yeah, I want to sort of talk about the history of cacao in India, the history of craft chocolate here in India. As we all know, cacao is not native to India. It comes from Southern and Central American regions. It was 1798 when the British brought cacao saplings to India to see if it can be grown here, because South Indian, as we know, cacao grows 20-degree north and south of the equator, which is where South Indian region falls under. So the experiments started from 1798, and they discovered that yeah, cacao can thrive successfully in India. And it was the state of Tamil Nadu where about 8 of the plantations were sort of the beginning of cacao in India, and it was just Criollo in the beginning. But over the period of time, Criollo couldn't survive. There was a disease that wiped out all the trees from this Tamil Nadu region. Then later came on the higher yielding Forastero and Trinitario variety, which was very popular in Ghana and Malaysia at the time. And yeah, cacao was officially brought to India sometime during 1960s and 70s. This is when cacao was introduced to existing plantations in India. So south of India is very popular for growing spices, coconuts, and a lot of fruits and vegetables. So there were existing plantations, existing farms where cacao was introduced. So the farmers who were already cultivating spices, they thought of adding cacao to their plantations, sort of to get more from the land without really having to disturb the existing crop that they were growing. Later, so it was basically Cadbury in 1960s and 70s. They had a campaign where they would give out free cacao saplings to farmers in south of India. And this is how cacao was sort of spread all across the South India region, and the Cadbury would buy back the cacao that farmers were growing. And this happened for about a decade, and towards the end of 1980s, Cadbury sort of declared that Indian cacao is not good enough, because they were comparing Indian cacao with the international cacao, which is basically Ghana. And they thought it's not as good as Ghana beans, and they stopped buying beans from Indian farmers. But up till this moment, Indian farmers were already cultivating cacao, and they had so much cacao growing, and there were no buyers. So here in the state of Karnataka, a cacao cooperative was formed. It's called Camco. It was formed by a group of farmers who grew cacao along the side with coconut and arecanut. And the head officers of Camco, they sort of went to Europe, they went to France and Switzerland and Belgium, and they got their cocoa beans tested. They worked with different chocolate companies in European countries, and they found out that Indian cacao is as good as Ghana cacao. And after that realization, Camco sort of started their own chocolate manufacturing unit. So in 1990s, Camco established a commercial chocolate manufacturing unit in Puttur. It's a small town in the state of Karnataka. And because Cadbury were not paying a good amount for cacao, Camco sort of started their own cooperative, started their own chocolate making to support the farmers. So that was a big wave in India to have. At the time in 1990s, when Camco had their factory, it was one of the biggest chocolate processing units in Southeast Asia. So this was sort of the rise in chocolate consumption in India, where cacao was grown and processed and consumed here in India. After that, in 2009, sort of one of the first bean to bar chocolate setups was established. There's a brand called Cocoa Craft in the state of Kerala. They were growing cacao, the farmers were growing cacao on their land, and they thought of experimenting and making their own chocolate. And they did a bit of research and found out that, you know, bean to bar chocolate can be made on a small scale. And from there onwards, we saw a lot more craft chocolate brands coming up. So it was 2012 when we saw two main brands come up. They're called Mason and Co. and Naviluna. They were the first sort of bean to bar chocolate brands in India to establish themselves. Since then, there have been many more craft chocolate brands here in India, and especially post lockdown, we saw great many new craft chocolate makers come up. Right now, I would say there are about 30 to 50 craft chocolate brands who have dedicated towards making amazing chocolate with cacao that's grown here in India. Yeah, before I move to the next slide, I think Lee has a question. What was Camco's capacity when they started? I am unsure, but at the moment they process about I think about 50 tons of cacao in a week or a day, something like that. Yeah, the factory is running 24/7 even now, 24/7 hours a day. There are 3 shifts, and the machines are from 60s. The factory looks amazing, actually. If you could visit this factory, it would be great to see chocolate manufacturing machines from back in 60s and 70s.
Okay, there's a question from Sahil wanting to know how can they acquire the saplings, and what's the difference in yield between those acquired saplings and what they're growing from seed from cocoa pods?
Okay. So we'll get into more detail in the next coming slides, but to answer you, there are, you could of course source your seedlings from existing plantations. And also there is an organization called, it's called CFTRI. They also give out cocoa saplings. Yeah.
Okay. Shall we move on? And there are some questions, but I would like to keep the flow.
Sure. All right.
And some of the questions we'll get to at the end, like India chocolate being exported. I have a vested interest in that because I want to eat it.
All right. So yeah, let's move. Yeah, so this is sort of the map of India, and the states that are colored in pink are the South Indian states. So there is Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra. These are ideal states which provide suitable climatical conditions for cacao to grow. And here, this data is from 2022. So Karnataka produces about 3.9 thousand metric tons of cacao. Kerala produces 10.1 thousand metric tons, Tamil Nadu 2.9, and Andhra, being the highest cacao growing state in India, grows 11.4 thousand metric tons of cacao in a year. Yeah. Can we go to the next slide?
And just to add to this, India ranks the 19th country in the world in cacao production right now, just to give you like a number in comparison with the other countries.
Yeah. Yeah, so now we move towards cacao cultivation. So cacao is mainly cultivated in these 4 states in India. There are other suitable locations, regions where cacao can be produced, but it's not on a higher scale. Only few who have a small piece of land are growing some cacao for their personal use. But Andhra, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka are the major cacao growing states here in India. And within them, Godavari region, Idukki, Malabar, Dakshin Kannada, Annamalai are some of the most popular cacao growing regions here in India, which are also exported to European and American chocolate makers. Yeah, so about can we move to the next slide? I want to show the pictures of how Indian cacao farms look like. Yeah, this is a very basic sort of like a picture that you see if you were to visit a cocoa plantation here in India. So cacao was introduced to existing coconut farms, areca nut farms, and spice farms in India. So cacao is grown under the shade of these tall trees, these tall coconut areca nut trees, because it provides shade. Cacao also needs a lot of sunlight, but not directly falling onto its leaves. It also needs a lot of rainfall, but not directly falling on the trees. Pretty similar to coffee production. Cacao also needs a lot of heavy pruning. It requires specific climatic conditions, which a lot of South Indian states provide, which is about 29 degrees Celsius is sort of the average temperature throughout the year. Cacao also requires a lot of water. And a lot of very healthy, nutritious soil, which is observed in these South Indian regions. Yeah, the history of cacao in India is quite interesting, where cacao was from farmers' point of view, cacao was seen as an added income for existing farmers. So they never really had to sort of prepare the land or think about changing the dynamic of the farm to accommodate cacao. The setup was already done by creating these spice farms, these coconut farms, and cacao was sort of was easily adaptable for these farms in South India region. Yeah, could we move to the next slide? Yeah, so India being the growing country, and also where a lot of craft chocolate is also consumed, produced, we get to meet the farmers, wherein a lot of European chocolate makers or American chocolate makers, they have difficulty actually having the contact of or having the privilege to go and spend time at the farmer at cocoa plantations. Is quite difficult, but here in India, it's very much possible. Cacao is quite, it's a wild plant. It requires very specific conditions for it to thrive. So farmers sort of have to work towards maintaining the conditions of the farm so that cacao sort of gives out a high yield throughout the year. That means they sort of have to maintain the number of coconut trees to provide shades. They need to provide water throughout the years. I think in 2022, we saw there were late monsoon showers. And here at the farm, I could see the effects of not having enough water for the plantations, and the trees were sort of, dying down. The leaves were growing brown. Yeah, it's not as easy to maintain a cocoa plantation, but with the right type of knowledge and adapting to the changing climate, we can sort of come through with the issues that farmers face. Then comes the pest and disease management. Here in India, all cocoa plantations face this issue of which is broom disease, which is also called black pod disease, which is a bacteria called Trichophthora, which is where this bacteria sort of multiply over a growing pod, and they spread very fast. Like a pod gets rotten and goes black within a couple of days, and this gets worse during monsoon because it's raining throughout the day and the temperatures are high. Where I've seen, in my experience, I've seen here at the farm, about 40% of the yield goes to waste during monsoon period. Yeah, it's quite tough to deal with it, but I'm seeing farmers from different regions trying out different methods to sort of lower the number of disease pods. Again, there are a lot of cacao farmers here in India. As we saw, we grow about 20 to 30,000 metric tons of cacao in a year, but majority of that cacao is going to Cadbury and Camco. Only fraction of it comes to craft chocolate makers, and the biggest reason would be that farmers do not have the right technical knowledge about the plant's health, about post-harvest process, how to store beans, and how to really make their crop profitable. So a lot of farmers lack that knowledge here in India. So that is also why because there's a difference between cacao that is processed for commercial chocolate making and craft chocolate making. When it comes to craft chocolate, chocolate makers are looking at the best beans that are possibly that farmers can possibly process, where if they don't have the knowledge about fermentation and the hygiene of that is required for the fermentation or drying techniques, the quality of beans sort of go down, which also affects the chocolate. The next thing would be, yeah, again, because there are cacao plantations existing in India, and chocolate makers can easily visit them, directly contact the cacao growers and have that conversation with them about the requirements of the craft chocolate industry. Having cacao in the existing farms, it has added a lot of value to farmers. It has added another commodity that will help farmers grow and help the rural economy. With the recent rise in cacao prices, a lot of Indian cocoa farmers are very happy. Earlier, they were not paying as much attention to cocoa, but with the rise in cacao, a lot of farmers are happy with the price at the moment and are willing to put a lot more effort into it. And we see that translate into better processing units, better lives for people who work at cocoa plantations. Yeah, so that's basic overview of what's happening with cacao at a farm level here in India.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions.
Yes.
Is it possible to speak about climate change and how that's affecting cocoa production?
Yes. So climate change is something that everyone is affected by. It's not just cacao. Every crop that is grown along the side of cacao is, so majorly it's coconut, arecanut, bananas, mangoes, black pepper, nutmeg, and so many other things that are grown. Everything is affected by climate change. Right now, the right thing to do would be to understand how the weather is changing and how the trees are also adapting to the change. The impact that I have personally seen is the change in the harvest seasons. Earlier back in 2018 or 19, I would see cacao almost all year long being harvested in the farm where I work. But now the harvest season is changing a little bit. So here in India, we have two peak seasons, depending on the location where the cocoa farm is. We have two peak harvest seasons. So here in Karnataka, where I am at the moment, the harvest season used to start in towards the end of February, March, and go till June, July. But right now, with the climate change, we see the cacao is coming out. The harvest season sort of starts towards the end of March, or even now in April. I've seen peak season sort of go in full swing in April, but we haven't seen the full yield yet. So that has been pushed. With that, we get our peak harvest season in monsoon now, which was summer back couple of years ago, but now it's monsoon. And about water harvesting as well, like to survive the long summers. Here at the farm, we've sort of worked around it and try to save the water so that we can use it during summers when there is less water. Yeah, so there are precautions and preventions and solutions that a lot of farmers have to sort of figure out what works for their plantation. Yeah, if
Okay,
that
thank
answers.
you. And then there's one other question. They'd like to know what methods are used to control witch's broom and black pod. Do you have any tips on that or any knowledge to share on that?
Yeah, so I asked the very well-known cacao grower in Central America what were they doing about the situation, and the answer I got was that if you see a littlest black mark on your cocoa pod, you harvest it, you put it in a plastic bag, you take it out of your farm and you burn it. So it is very difficult to control this. But we've been trying many different methods. We've been spraying neem water. We've been covering our cocoa pods with plastic, but that doesn't work. So the only solution is to do frequent farm walks almost every day. And if we see a pod that is rotting on a tree, we take it out and we put it in a plastic bag and throw it outside the farm. But when you're sort of working with 100 acre of plantation and 7,000 trees, it becomes tough to do that every day. But we've been diligently walking around the plantation, and if we see a section of a plantation which is affected a lot more than the other, we sort of go there and harvest the black pods and throw them outside the farm. Again, this is also an organic farm, so we do not use any sort of pesticides or chemical sprays to prevent this, so it becomes even harder. But I think these are there is no such solution for this.
Okay, so we'll move to the next slide.
Yes, please.
I actually want to add something to the previous slide. Just in terms with what we are experiencing now with the rise in the commodity cacao prices. Here in India, the farmers are mixing the commodity cacao and the specialty cacao because they are getting the same price for both. So that is something that it's really affecting the craft chocolate makers in their ability to get fine cacao and to like filtrate the fine cacao from the commodity cacao. And I think one positive aspect that we can look at in the long run is that we will see more farmers choosing to plant cacao by seeing the new cacao prices, which will definitely remain higher than before. Ketaki, do you want to add anything to this?
So back a couple of years ago, the cacao prices, for the longest time, cacao prices were quite low and they were not going up. And a lot of people who had cacao on their plantations already, they cut it down and then planted rubber because it was yielding much higher prices. They were looking at other crops than cacao because cacao requires a lot of work throughout the year. It's quite labor intensive. You need a frequent pruning, a lot of water. So yeah, a lot of farmers were not as excited to continue growing it, and they were looking at other options such as rubber because it's quite easy to grow the rubber plants, rubber trees. But right now, because rubber also depletes the soil drastically, and if you have a rubber plantation, you can't really grow anything else around those trees. Wherein with cacao, you can grow other multiple crops, veggies, spices around it, which is also added bonus. But with the prices going up, people who have land in these regions are looking into processing cacao. And again, with the rise of craft chocolate consumption and so many brands coming up, a lot of farmers are also keen on learning how to make chocolate, or they want to provide their quality beans to craft chocolate makers because you see farmers name the name of the plantation on the wrapper, where it's coming from, where if you were to sell your cocoa beans to, let's say, Cadbury or Camco, they don't really mention where the cocoa is coming from. So there is an interest in terms of growers. They want to understand what this craft chocolate industry is all about. And I think in coming future, in next few years, we'll see a lot more collaborations between chocolate makers and the growers.
Hi, it's Teresa.
Yeah.
I have a question. So in most of the, well, let's say in many of the cocoa growing countries, this increase in price as a commodity is not being passed on to the farmer. So I gather what you're sharing is that in India, it is being passed on to the farmer. The increase in revenue is.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
it is. Farmers who choose to stock their beans and keep it because they are speculating on a even bigger increase in the price in the next few months. So there are a lot of like interesting things happening here because of the increase of
And again,
the commodity cacao prices.
we don't really have like an authority or a middleman thing. So a lot of farmers have direct contacts with either in Cadbury or in Camco. So yeah, there is no like a chain where there is no like a chain where a grower has to go through to be able to sell their beans. They can directly go there and have the person from these companies come and pick up their cocoa directly. So yeah, so farmers are definitely getting the prices that we see now directly rather than going through different chains and middlemen. That doesn't happen here in India.
Okay, we have another farmer-related question, and then we'll move to the next slide. About technical knowledge, how can someone learn and get the required technical knowledge right from growing, harvesting, and especially fermentation and other post-harvest process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are you need to sort of have an innate interest in this topic for you to really get into it, because it's not readily available. But if you look for it, I'm sure you'll find ways of understanding cacao cultivation and post-harvest process. Something that I do here at the Varanasi farms is we sort of educate farmers on the cultivation part as well, about fixing their soil, about water harvesting, and different methods that farms can adopt in terms of cultivation and harvesting. So yeah, and then again, there is this institute called ICFTRI. They share a lot of knowledge about cacao growing as well. So you could visit one of those. There's one in Puttur in Karnataka, and there's one in Kasargod in Kerala. These are governing bodies, so if you go there and ask them questions, they should be able to help you out. But if you're looking into processing cacao, especially for craft chocolate, I would say trial and error. Read a lot of books. There are YouTube videos out there, and there is no like such a place where you could just go and learn how to process cocoa beans for craft chocolate. It's a lot about trial and error, and you sort of need to figure out what works for you at your farm. So yeah, it's about dedicating time and doing a lot of experiments to sort of figure out exactly what type of fermentation is working for you, which method or which process you need to adapt for drying your cocoa, depending. So in the western side, southwest side, here in south of India, we get the harvest in monsoon season, so it's pretty difficult to dry the cocoa beans. So a lot of people have opted for polyhouse dryers or artificial drying methods. But in the east-west side of South India, they not east-west, east-south, sorry. They get their harvest during December, January, and February, which is where they get a lot of sun as well. So they end up drying their cacao in the sun without needing the polyhouse to dry the beans or the artificial dryers. So again, to understand the whole process, you need to figure out a lot of these questions. But you could reach out to me. I would love to sort of help you out with that as well.
Mrs.
Awesome.
Balu, I noticed you, sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, that Mrs. Balu did a raise hand feature. So I just want to acknowledge that and see, did she want to come in and ask a question or provide a comment?
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Cocoa Town has conducted a lot of webinars since 2020. And then we have a
Yes.
lot of webinars on, especially on post-harvest process that, anybody wants to know, they can go and access it and watch the videos. And there are a lot of consultants that are specializing in different regions, like Ketaki is doing there, but also there are international, consultants. So there are a lot of ways depending on how you want to approach it, but there's a lot of resources available on cocotown.com under education. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, Cocoa Town webinars are also quite helpful. I've attended a few and learned from them as well. Yeah.
Patricia, did you have something you wanted to add? I think I interrupted you.
No, I was just saying that I think we can continue with the next slide.
Yes, very.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So India grows many cacao hybrids derived from Forastero and Trinitario. And these hybrids were developed in Kerala in the 1960s when we saw a growth in planting cacao here in India. The fact that we see mostly hybrids here doesn't mean that it doesn't have potential for being fine flavor cacao. Actually, the factors that contribute to that are the ones like the terroir, the climate, the humidity, the soil, the acidity, the pH, all that, the yields with which cacao it's intercropped, and then of course the farmers practicing of harvesting the pods at the right time, because that's really important for flavors, not to harvest them when they are underripe or overripe. When they are opening the pods and putting the beans for fermentation, ideally that should happen in the same day, but requires obviously a lot of labor, so we don't see many farmers following these protocols. Then of course fermentation, I think it's the biggest factor in developing complex flavors in cacao beans, and that has to be done with a lot of care and knowledge. It has to have the right numbers of turns. There are parameters that have to be tested every day. So there is a lot of care and attention that has to be put into it. We see now a lot of farmers having an interest to do that, and a lot of craft chocolate makers who either grow their own cacao or have started post-harvest processing units. For example, we have Manam, which is a new brand that has started last year, and they created the second largest post-harvest processing unit. They call it the fermentary in the world. So we are very happy to see, more and more knowledge related to the fermentation and the drying part as well. In terms of the flavors, Indian cacao is generally very vibrant, bright, and fruity. There are differences from farm to farms affected by the factors that I just talked about. For example, just to give you an idea, in Kerala, we see a lot of fruity notes like dried fruit, berries, honey, nuts. And then here in Karnataka, where both me and Ketaki live, we see more chocolatey notes, even floral, banana, coconut. Then Tamil Nadu has more spicy notes like nutmeg, cinnamon, citrusy as well, even run sometimes, and herbal notes, hibiscus as well. And I think Teresa, just before we started the webinar, was telling us that she just tasted chocolate made with Indian beans from Tamil Nadu, and she could taste very vibrant cherry and strawberry notes, as well as some hibiscus, if I remember well. And then the fourth state which grows cacao, which is Andhra Pradesh, has more darker notes and with woody, earthy flavors, even like some fruity notes like plums or stone fruits, smoky sometimes. So yeah, it's like really, really diverse and impacted by a lot of factors. Does anyone have any questions? I think I saw some questions, but I don't know why, Teresa, I'm not able to
Let's
see
see.
the.
Is the flavor of the beans affected by the crops in the environment?
Yeah. So it is believed, I don't think we really have like strong researches that demonstrate that, but everyone believes that the flavors in the cacao are impacted by the crops with which it's intercrop, like of course coconut, areca nut, which are the most common, and they are the canopy for the cacao, but then also the other fruiting trees in between, like mango, chiku trees, spices as well. So yeah, and I think that's why Indian cacao is so diverse too, because in India we see it as a multi-cropping system and not a monocropping system like in African countries, for example, or South American countries.
Yeah, so moving forward, I want to talk about the sustainability that comes with India growing cacao and also being part of crop chocolate movement here. Again, as Patricia said, a lot of cacao is intercrop between coconut, areca nut, banana, which helps maintain the soil health, biodiversity, and the microclimate that is required by cacao for it to thrive. Cacao is again a wild plant. It likes biodiversity, so it thrives very well when there's a lot of biodiversity around it. And maybe that is also one of the reasons why in Ghana, the production of cocoa beans in Ghana is going down. It's because it's just cacao that's planted everywhere else, but wherein cacao needs biodiversity. So here in India, because it's grown with alongside so many fruiting plants and trees, having agroforestry sort of maintains the soil and also the trees Then comes organic farming. A lot of farmers are trying to grow their crops organically without the use of chemical pesticides. They are opting for natural fertilizers, which is what I learned here at the farm as well. Having good soil and sort of working towards maintaining the nutritional value of soil is also a major part of chocolate making, because with great trees you have good pods coming to you. The water conservation, again, cacao tree requires a lot of water, and also the trees that are grown around cacao, which is arecanut and coconut, are also the trees that require a lot of water. So your plantation needs to be around a lot of water, and it needs to have what. So here in summers, we have irrigation system, and the trees are watered once in 3 days. It's yeah, so to find ways of conserving water is also very important for cacao growers. So we see a lot of rainwater harvesting um, happen here. A lot of ponds are filled up, and the water is stored for the coming months, for the coming summer season. Soil conservation as well. With having so many biodiverse plants and trees around cacao, it helps maintain the temperature of the soil. So the soil is not really exposed to sun, and that's why because having tall trees amongst the cocoa tree with the shade, it helps create microclimate, which keeps the soil moist and doesn't really let it become dry. So mulching is one of the you'll experience mulching in every cocoa plantations where you go, because a lot of organic matter is collected, and it's collected around the tree to mulch the tree. Again, biodiversity preservations, farms which are surrounded by a lot of forest land sort of ends up, a lot of people don't really go into forest lands or try to cut trees to spread cocoa here in India. And it's also illegal to cut native plants and trees that are grown on the land. So that way we end up protecting the natural flora and the fauna. Again, having agroforestry also helps maintaining the wild animals, the bacteria, the fungal matter on these plantations. There are few farms here in India are working with fair trade initiatives, where yeah, here with my travels, I've seen the farm workers, the laborers being taken care of, and they're paid higher than the minimum wage prices. And also plantation owners look after the laborers, because they're required throughout the year at the plantations. So I have noticed that a lot of plantation growers sort of have schools that they've established for the children, and they provide food and shelter to a lot of the workers that work at the plantations. About low carbon footprint, this is sort of a new concept, but farmers and chocolate makers are looking into reducing the carbon footprint in any which way possible. whether it comes to shipping the cocoa beans or packing them, packing chocolate bars, and using renewable energy. Here at the farm, we have solar panels to as a source of energy. So a lot of my chocolate room is we use solar energy to run it. So yeah, we see there is a brand called Mason and Co. They have solar panels as well. So about 50% of their electricity consumption comes through solar panels. So there are initiatives, and a lot of people are interested in making their cacao and chocolate factories more and more sustainable as we move forward. Yeah, so this is sort of a common view of a cocoa plantation. If you ever to visit a cocoa plantation in South India, it looks very lush. It looks like a dense forest. And these are evergreen trees. So even in summers, it never really dries down completely. And as you can see, the water pond. This is a picture of a Varanasi organic farm. So here they follow many water harvesting methods, and building these ponds makes sure that trees get water throughout the year, no matter of the monsoons, the seasons, if they change. Yeah, and since a lot of cocoa trees now, because cocoa was sort of introduced in late 60s and 70s, so now those trees have become 60-year-old. There are some trees which are 60-year-old cocoa trees, but they're still giving out high yield. And the biggest reason would be the agroforestry, the organic farming methods. These practices help preserve the tree, and they don't really age as faster. The yield doesn't go lower. A lot of the sustainable practices, they help with overall cacao production in India.
Yeah. So we'll be talking a bit about the market trends, and to just give you a bit of a background information about what was happening until quite recently here. A lot of people knew only about dairy milk from Cadbury, and believe that fine chocolate is Belgian chocolate, and the dark variants of Lindt. Unfortunately, of course, we can still see that even nowadays, a lot of restaurant and coffee shops menu have Belgian chocolate as a part of the name for a hot chocolate or a milkshake. We really hope that will change in the future through the education that everyone does in the industry. Also, I feel India has a very strong culture for sweets, and the palate, it's inclined for like really sweet things. But with the pandemic, we saw a change in this. We saw more people being aware of the ingredients in the things they consume, where the ingredients come from, about the health aspect of it, the sustainability aspect of it. So we really saw a growth in the interest for craft chocolate. And also we saw more and more brands communicating very strongly about craft chocolate, and taking initiatives in educating people through social media or workshops or factory tours. All that started, I would say, mostly after the pandemic. We also are experiencing right now a rise in interest for white chocolate, for craft white chocolate, which is very different to the commercial ones. It's much less sweet, and you can actually taste the notes in the cocoa butter. So that is really nice. Then the market is divided between people who like to stick with darker versions of chocolate. I believe mostly because of health reasons. And then we see people who switch to craft chocolate, but they still want to enjoy the flavors that they are familiar with. So they will go for inclusions, for sweeter chocolate like milk chocolate and white chocolate. And yeah, Indian flavors are always appreciated by everyone. We have a really diverse landscape of inclusions here in India. We have a lot of brands who are playing with native flavors, and we feel it's a good gateway for people to discover craft chocolate. We also saw a rise in interest for confectionery products, like bonbons and pastries made with craft chocolate, drinking chocolate, ice cream. That's why some of the craft chocolate brands have an entire range of all these products. Some of them even 200 different products for their consumers to discover. And then something really interesting which started happening about 1.5 years back, 2 years back, is farms that realize that there are a lot of things they can do with the cacao parts that were usually not used or used in different ways, like using the cacao husk to make cacao tea, which actually tastes like chocolate, using the cacao juice and making sometimes concentrates out of it, which have higher shelf life, vinegars, and different sauces. So those kind of products are really appreciated by the consumers. Yeah, then pastry chefs also started having more of an interest in switching to Indian couvertures and exploring the more richer, deeper flavors of using Indian cacao in their bakes. In the past few years, we started seeing a lot of collaborations and partnerships between farms and post-harvest processing units with craft chocolate makers in India and abroad as well. The two biggest ones and the ones who are supplying most of the Indian cacao abroad are Go Ground, which is a post-harvest processing unit from Idukki in Kerala. It was started by a couple of a European couple 6 years back, and they sell their beans mostly to the European market. And then we have Regal Plantation, or Chocolate, the name of their craft chocolate brand, which is based out of Annamalai in Tamil Nadu, which are using, they have their own cacao farms and they are using mostly their own beans and they supply to the US market, and even some chocolate brands in Middle East as well. And the chocolate brand, which is Regal Plantations brand, is one of the few brands which is present in the European market, and I think they are selling their bars even in some parts of US as well. There are a few chocolate brands who have started to showcase their products in international exhibition, like Cacao or Salon du Chocolat or Northwest in US, and they are gaining a lot of attention and a lot of appreciation for their products. And with our festival, we see a lot of collaboration between craft chocolate brands and other artisanal brands. For example, we've seen chocolate brands collaborating with cheesemakers to create a bar with a cheese inclusion. Also, pastry chefs collaborating with craft chocolate brands to bring innovative products. And we see a very similar path with specialty coffee and artisanal cheese. The growth is definitely slower compared with the specialty coffee because craft chocolate, it's much newer, and the knowledge is also more in the beginning compared to specialty coffee, and faster than artisanal cheese, which is fairly new in India, and it started just a few years back. I think we can pass to the next slide if we don't have any questions.
There
I
is a
think
couple questions, but I think
Yeah.
maybe because I want to make sure you get to everything, we'll hold them. We're
Okay,
already,
for the
time
end.
flies when we're having fun, and it's 11:20, so I want to make
Yeah.
sure you get to give the whole presentation. So we do have some, but I think we'll hold them.
Okay, perfect. So we'll continue with the consumer education. As I mentioned before, we have a lot of new brands with very strong voice and very good communication in medias, newspapers, social media, and they really help build more awareness and reach new people and new markets. So we are very happy to have these brands around. Then I feel what is really important for everyone in this industry here in India is to come together and have a unified voice and have a clear communication towards their consumers in order to reach more and more of them. I think having fun and engaging workshops and events help as well draw attention and reach more people, and even kids, which are the next generation and which can really promote these things. We see farm tours happening at a lot of farms here in Karnataka and Kerala as well. We see a lot of brands having experiential centers where people can interact with chocolate, create their own chocolate bars, and learn the entire process in a very interactive and fun way. We've seen a rise in online events as well, like chocolate tastings, even like very basic bean to bar making workshops. And I personally feel it's really important to work with restaurants, chefs, pastry chefs who can create menus with craft chocolate and cacao that can bring a lot of value um, to us. And we've been doing a lot of interesting events with different chefs. Last year before the festival, we had a cacao and corn dinner, a 6-course menu by a very popular chef here. And the menu was inspired by the Mesoamerican culinary culture. And it was in collaboration with Mason and Co. And people were just mind blown to discover how much you can do with cacao. We'll be talking a bit about the challenges that chocolate makers and cacao growers encounter here in India. For chocolate makers, I feel the biggest challenge is the access to fine cacao. And especially now with the rise in the cacao prices, it's even more. And especially for those who are not used to stock large quantities of cacao bean. But yeah, it's in general, it's difficult to identify farms and to have like a constant supply of good quality beans. We have definitely insufficient fine cacao to fulfill the demands in the market. So the past few years, especially in 2022, when we had those extended monsoons, we've seen a lot of craft chocolate makers forced to source cacao from other Asian countries because they couldn't find cacao in India. There is a lot of lack in the consistency of the quality. It's varying quite a lot from harvest to harvest, unfortunately. So yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest challenge as well. Then I would say reaching and educating bigger masses of people. It's also a huge challenge because a lot of people, even if cacao grows in India, they never seen a cacao pod. They don't know that chocolate comes from a fruit. So there is a huge gap in the masses knowledge about craft chocolate. Then we see very often the myth that imported chocolate, as I mentioned, mostly Belgian chocolate or European chocolate is much better than Indian chocolate. This is also because of the lack of knowledge and education. It's very difficult for people from this industry to find good quality labor and to train them in chocolate making. And also the people here tend to not stay for very long in the same job. So a lot of them, even if they will be trained for a few months in chocolate making, they will seek different opportunities and just jump from one job to the other. So retaining qualified workers is difficult. And then lastly, I would say a a big challenge is finding platforms to retail chocolate. So access to shelves, it's also quite difficult. Ketaki, do you want to continue with the challenges for the growers?
Yes. Yeah, so again, we saw, we from what Patricia said, that cacao is not very consistent and it changes according to harvest, according to the season, and it's because there is lack of information and knowledge about how to process the cacao, how to store it as well. Where a lot of growers, they feel that they need to invest a lot in terms of finance, labor, which they don't really feel it's worth doing all of that. But with craft chocolate requirements, I think that is one of the biggest challenge, where farmers are not really interested in applying the knowledge or applying the resources towards cacao that is good for craft chocolate making. Again, there are issues with climate change, preserving the soil, the water resources, and the labor. Labor is also one of the biggest challenges for growers, because you need people to go into plantations and plug the right pods. You can't really take any machines in the plantation, so it has to be people who go into the plantations, select the right pods, and bring them to the fermentation center wherever the cacao is being processed, to break open the pods, to remove the seeds, to put it for fermentation, and again changing the boxes. So you need quite a lot of labor to follow through all the processes up until drying and storing your cocoa beans. And right now, I mean, I think right now with the increase in price, we hopefully see growers putting a lot more effort into this. But they think, since cacao, I mean, back like a month or so before, growers would sort of pay attention to other high paying crops than cacao, because cacao was sort of like a crop that was going into loss. So they would rather focus on coconut or areca nut, which were fetching a lot more prices than cacao. But we see, hopefully we see that changing in near future. No government support. Again, the research centers that work with cacao here are not really, they don't really look for flavors, where that is the key in craft chocolate industry. A lot of the governing research centers look for high yielding cacao trees and trees that can withstand diseases and are more resistant, rather than looking at the flavor aspect of cacao. So if you yeah, if a grower wants to process cocoa beans specifically for craft chocolate making, there is no government support or any sort of aid that's given to farmers.
Yeah, so we will talk a bit about the future of craft chocolate here in India. We expect to see a lot of growth in the next 5 years. The predicted growth rate is an approximate 30% in the next 5 years, 250 craft chocolate makers by 2028. we think India will become one of the few origin countries with the best craft chocolate makers in the world. We are sure that they will reach more international markets in the next 5 years. And I think us coming together and focusing on educating the consumers about the quality of Indian cacao and the value health benefits of the craft chocolate compared with the commercial chocolate, that will also contribute to the growth. Also building the community of the craft chocolate industry, and giving it platforms to reach a larger audience, and doing events together will help. With the festivals and all the events that we are doing together, we hope to raise the bar in terms of the quality of the chocolate and motivate even the smaller craft chocolate makers to grow and explore and use their creativity to create more and more interesting products to showcase in the market. Do you want to add anything to this, Ketki?
No, I think, yeah, there is definitely a growing future in India, in terms of even from the plantation levels to the consumer level. And again, through the festival that we plan every year and the events that we do throughout the year. And over the 6 years of my experience as well, I've seen a lot more people know about craft chocolate. And then there are more retail shops. There's a brand called Subco that has opened up a craft chocolate experience center where they get to see how chocolate is made. And yeah, and then there are a lot more brands sort of getting into retail market, getting into experiential centers and offering a new kind of chocolate experience to Indians in the major cities. So there is a lot more awareness about cacao. And this has all happened in the past 3 or 4 years. So in just these 3 or 4 years, we've seen cacao grow quite exponentially. So that's great. And I look forward to seeing the next 5 years.
Yeah, so just a few words about the festival. The festival takes place every November here in Bangalore, in India. It's bringing together cacao farmers, craft chocolate makers, and other artisanal brands who work with chocolate. And we would like to invite all of you, if you have the occasion, to come and visit and discover the world of Indian cacao and craft chocolate. And yeah, if you have any questions, you can reach to us. I think Coco Town has shared our contact details next to the link for this webinar. So we look forward
Seeing you there.
hearing from you.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is, if it's okay, stop sharing the screen and we'll open it up for questions.
Sure.